Okay, so only shortly about current negotiations going on at UPOV. As you maybe know, you see the last UPOV Act was negotiated back 30 years ago, and there is no new negotiation being seen for the next years. But what is changing are a lot of definitions of core terms of the convention, and this is done with so-called explanatory notes. So the UPOV committees and finally the UPOV Council adopts nearly every year new explanatory notes to define the core terms of the convention. Important to note, these explanatory notes are not binding for the member states, but they are, for example, included in the guidance for the preparation of laws. So when you are a new member, you get this guidance, and so you got the information from there. They could also be used, for example, by courts. A lot of terms which are defined in these explanatory notes, for example, what does it mean, private and non-commercial, are often not defined in the national laws. And because they are not defined in national laws, the definition given by UPOV is maybe quite relevant. So I just show you what is in this explanatory note today about the term private and non-commercial use. This says everything needs to be, if it likes to be out of the scope, private and non-commercial. So if it's only private or only non-commercial, it's not out. And as I'm sorry for this long text, but I think it's important or interesting to read. So they say, for example, private and non-commercial is the propagation of a variety by an amateur gardener, but they is not allowed to provide the material to others, for example, to your neighbor, because this would be seen as non-private. So this is prohibited. So propagation, even if you are a variety, an amateur in your garden, it's allowed. But if you exchange maybe some seeds with your neighbor, you are breaking the law. And then there is another example which says the propagation by a variety, sorry, I don't see it, by a farmer exclusively for the production of a food crop to be consumed entirely by that farmer and the dependents of the farmer living on that holding. I don't know if you see how narrow this is. So for example, if I am a farmer or a home gardener and I invite my grandmother to dinner, but my grandmother is not living on my holding, I am breaking the laws because this is not longer private and non-commercial. And stupidly, then at the end, they say, therefore, activities including subsistence farming could be seen as private and non-commercial. But honestly, I don't know any farmer who is consuming everything he's producing in his field, and he is not inviting anybody else for a dinner at his home. So this is just an absurd definition we have today, which is total crazy. But there's been now a long procedure. I cut this, and this was finally decided to have a working group which starts next March in 2022 to work on a new definition, on a new explanatory note. What does it mean, private and non-commercial? And one driver of this revision was an initiative done by Oxfam, by Plantum, so the Dutch Breeders Association, and Euroseeds, the European Breeder Association. And they said, yes, in a way, we are open to have a broader definition. And they like to do it, or they propose to do it like it is in this graph. So they say first question, is a variety protected? Okay, if it's no, anyway, you are free. If it's yes, then the question is the seed sown with the intention of growing a crop substantially for home consumption? You see, now it's substantially, it's no totally. And if it's a yes, then you are still allowed. If, for example, you produce non-food crops or seed production as main activity, so seed production as main activity, you would be out. Then the question is, do you sell, for example, with a dealer or broker or seed shop? If you do this, if you sell your seeds, your propagation material through a dealer, you are commercial, but if not, you're still in. And for at the end, are the seeds exchanged and sold unbranded, uncertified, and untreated? If it's yes, this would be an activity which is seen as private and non-commercial. So you see, even selling, I would say, on a local market and so on, would be allowed. So it's in a way broadening the scope, still limiting, but much broader than before. And then member states, organizations, breed organizations, and so on, have been allowed to make comments on this proposal. And I'd just like to show you the comment by the European Union. So they say there is no experience in any way on the implementation of the exception, and they are ready to work on the revision. And in their comments, they also quote the definition of a semi-subsistence farmer in the EU. And I thought it's quite interesting that they mention this definition here when we speak about private and non-commercial, but also about subsistence farming. And they say that out of the 10.5 million farms in Europe, 4 million could be seen as semi-subsistence, with the output below 2,000 euro. And 3/4 of these farms consume more than a half of the production. So they did not say explicitly that in their view, the sale, the exchange, and so on by these 4 million farms in the future could be seen as private and non-commercial and out of the scope, but who knows? And then there has also been a comment by the European Coordination Via Campesina, which clearly states that it's important to see that even with this new definition, the farmers cannot enjoy the right to seeds as guaranteed in UNDRAP, because it limits the rights of farmers to the non-commercial use. But farmers normally are working commercially. So it's clearly not accepted, but I've seen colleagues from ECVC are here and maybe they could further contribute. Thank you very much. APBREBES will be in this working group, which will start in March and maybe already finalize its work in 1 year. UPOV is often much faster with all this work than other international organizations.